Openings are incredibly important. You only get 2 shots to get them right. Wait, no, 1 shot to get them right. Damn. Your novel needs to do several things within its first couple of scenes. These will lay the groundwork to set the rest of the novel up for success. You can have the best ending in the world, but if it's blocked by a lackluster opening, then your novel will never live up to its potential. And potential is the main point of an opening, demonstrating the potential of your novel to be great. That's what a great opening does. So to potentially potentiate a more potent portending of your novel's prosaic potential, I've devised a list of some things that you should accomplish within your opening scenes. Speaking of potential things, potentially consider subscribing to my channel. I think there's the potential that you'll enjoy it. All right, first up, your opening pages should start with something compelling. I don't subscribe to this idea that your novel's first line needs to be this massively compelling, interesting sentence that instantly introduces the protagonist, the conflict, several key elements of the setting, and backstory of the characters, all while instantly informing the reader what your writing style is like. I think the hype around the opening sentence itself is a little bit overblown. That being said, I do think having something interesting happen within the first paragraph or the first half page of your novel is very important. Set the reader into a situation and give them something interesting to keep them reading. It could be a train coming off the tracks, it could be someone pointing a gun at someone else, it could be a knock at the door in the middle of the night. You don't want to overwhelm the reader with a bunch of action or a big confusing battle or something like that. It's best to really focus on a simple but compelling hook that will get the reader's attention. And this does not have to be action at all. It could just be something that makes the reader want to know more. It might just be a character putting on a specific gray suit on a Tuesday afternoon like they do every Tuesday afternoon. You just need a little bit of curiosity to draw the reader in. Once you have them, the opening moves to its next important task, which is grounding the reader. A great opening is a balance between generating intrigue and curiosity and getting the reader all the information they need to know in order to enjoy the story. You need to bring them up to speed on the characters, the setting, the rules of the world, whether or not cats are capable of talking. Now, you'll have to do this throughout the novel, but it's trickiest at the beginning because the reader is at the bottom of your novel's learning curve. They haven't developed relationships with any of the characters yet. They're less familiar with things. Everything is still new and kind of confusing. Sure, the reader is probably interested in hearing about Jenny's backstory in chapter 10 once we've learned about her affinity for macrame and that she spends her weekends hunting down werewolves. But in chapter 2 or 3, we just know her as a diesel engine mechanic and amateur pastry chef in Delaware, and it's only Wednesday. So diving into intricate details of her backstory is probably not as interesting for the reader earlier on in the story. We're more concerned about developing a relationship with the characters and getting an understanding of the plot and the setting. But in order to do that, we need to learn things about the character's plot and setting, so you have to strike a balance here. Focus on details that are either necessary for the reader to know or details that create intrigue, details that lead to questions the reader will want answered. You can probably err on the side of giving less details than you think you need to. A slow burn of discovery is usually better than a massive expository overload at the beginning of a story. Also remember that not knowing things usually creates curiosity. In fact, I would argue the only way you can create curiosity is by not knowing things. So withholding information might actually be a good thing. Which brings us to the final thing a great opening does, and that is set expectations for the rest of the story. Good stories always have an element of predictability to them. They set out rules and then play within those rules. The opening of these stories works to establish those rules. Most of the work of writing a good ending actually happens in the opening and with the setting of these expectations. I would argue that any bad ending could potentially be solved by changing the opening and setting better expectations. Having a legal drama that's solved by having a wizard leap out in the last scene and force the murderer to confess using magic or something is a really crummy way to end a realistic legal thriller novel. People probably won't like that ending. But if the opening of that novel hints at the existence of wizards or introduces them as a possibility, then it could make the ending work. It will make the ending less unpredictable. It won't seem as random or out of left field as it would without introducing those elements. Good storytelling is about resolving a conflict within the rules that you've laid out for the reader, and you establish those rules within the opening of the story. What these rules ultimately do is hint at where the story is going. We don't necessarily know how it's going to get there, but we sort of know where it's going to go. Again, this comes back to potential. By laying this stuff out in your opening, you create the potential for a really engaging ending. If we know that destroying the golden spatula is the only way to stave off the mutant crepe pan uprising, then the beginning of the story sets up an intriguing ending. Good novels are sort of retroactively predictable. They lay out a bunch of elements that don't obviously point out where the story is going until the ending happens. At this point, the reader begins to see all of this stuff that was laid out in the opening in a different light. A good beginning really only comes to fruition once we reach the ending. And that, I think, is a sign you've got a really good beginning. If the ending of your story makes the reader think back to what was established earlier on, if these events are seen in a new light once they reach the ending, that's a really good sign that you've written a great opening. A really good opening is kind of a bit of delayed gratification. The reader may not see the value of it until they get to the end of the novel, which makes writing a good opening a little bit more challenging because there's not immediate gratification for the reader. Now, even though we've been speaking about openings, it's now time to talk about endings because we've reached the end of this video. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.